Now I'd like to turn to Leviathan itself. Remember, we're talking about Hobbes, 1588 to 1679. Leviathan is his masterpiece, and Leviathan is published in 1651 in English, and as I mentioned in a previous video, about 15-ish years later, he publishes it in Latin. Now, Leviathan is a long and complicated book and broken up into various parts and chapters, etc., etc. What I'm looking at is part one, which is entitled Of Man. So I'm going to follow Locke's language here, Of Man, and chapter 23, and of the natural condition of mankind as concerning their felicity, happiness, state of happiness, felicity, and misery. Notice the two L's in natural, which we would say, hey, that's an incorrect spelling. Well, in Hobbes' day, English was not really standardized. So if you go back and look at original texts from that time, punctuation is different. Even grammar is kind of different. Spelling is certainly all over the place. Go back and pick up, as I mentioned in the previous video, that Hobbes is not a colleague, but certainly lived at the same time as Shakespeare. And go back and look at Shakespeare's original stuff, and you'll see the spelling is all over the place. It's quite different than what we see now. In any case, so I'm going to follow Hobbes's spelling here for the most part, certainly when I'm writing out any of his titles. So yeah, so two L's. Now, in this one of Man, Hobbes is telling a story, and I'm going to go through it in a little more detail, but it roughly follows along this kind of chart. Remember I said Hobbes was trying to be part of this scientific revolution, and he wanted to put political thinking on basically the footing of a science. And in that sense, and what I mean by that is simply that Hobbes wanted to construct a system in which you could think through politics like you could think through geometry. Hobbes was quite fascinated by mathematics as well. He spent a long time unsuccessfully trying to show how you could square the circle. That's an old mathematical problem that was eventually proved that you can't do it using classical constructive methods. But Hobbes thought, you couldn't. He spent a long time struggling with this. So he had an interest in geometric and arithmetic forms of reasoning. And he thought that that was the answer in science, and it would be the answer in politics as well. So his system, his approach in this section that I want to talk about goes roughly like this. He starts off with some empirical claims, namely that men are equal, and equal in two ways. And so this is an empirical claim about how things are. And he says that, so I'm going to read a little bit. Men are by nature equal in, let's go up a bit here. Hang on. All right. So men are by nature equal in mind. So nature hath made men so equal in the faculties of body and mind, as that though there be found one man sometimes manifestly stronger in body or quicker of mind than another, yet when all is reckoned together, when you think of the whole picture, the difference between man and man is not so considerable, as that one man can thereupon claim to himself any benefit to which another may not pretend, as well as he. For as to the strength of body, the weakest has strength enough to kill the strongest, either by secret machination or by confederacy with others that are in the same danger as himself. So even if you're weaker than the man next to you, you can probably figure out a way to kill him. So again, Hobbes is starting right off with the notion of conflict and equality. And this is what's really interesting about Hobbes is he says that conflict arises out of equality. Normally we think of equality as the goal. Once people are equal, things will be better. And Hobbes is like, no, that's actually not how it works. Violence and conflict arises out of the fact that we're equal. So we're equal in body and mind. He says that's just an empirical claim. Like, I'm not arguing that. He's just like, look around. So in body, we're not all that different. Yeah, sure. There's, I'm not going to fight the heavyweight champion of the world because, I would be destroyed. But that doesn't mean, Hobbes says, that I'm totally a victim or totally, have to be oppressed by that. But remember, he's talking in the absence of political structures here, so keep that in mind. So basically, we can figure out how to kill each other, and we're all pretty well equally good at that. So bodily, physically, we're all roughly the same. Is second, so, and the same thing with mind. Yeah, somebody's a little bit more clever than you are. Somebody's a little bit smarter than I am, but so what? We can basically, again, band together. We can overthrow someone who's even smarter. And nobody's that much smarter than anybody else. Yeah, maybe way smarter than like a snail or a tree or something like that. But amongst humans, no, not that much difference. So Hobbes is trying to pull way back and say, look, when you look at human beings, they're largely equal. Not in terms of like where they are in society equal. No. Just biologically. Nature basically has distributed her gifts quite fairly, right? And so in that sense, Hobbes is starting off with empirical claims, hence a scientific approach. He's not starting with souls and God and all that stuff. Nah, he's just talking about straightforward how we're basically the same. If you just put us all out on a field, right, and then aliens could look at us, they would just say, well, these people are all basically human organisms, and they're all roughly equal. Some a little taller, a little shorter, whatever. But in the great scheme of things, not that much different among them. So again, keep in mind that Hobbes is saying something that is a rather, arguably, a fairly dark thought. Conflict and problems arise out of equality. Equality is not the goal. Equality is actually a problem for Hobbes because it engenders all kinds of terrible stuff. How does it do that? Well, because we're all roughly the same, it's like, well, why should that guy get that? Why should she get that? I have legitimate hopes and aspirations too. So out of this level of equality, well, on the empirical level of body and mind, Hobbes says arises the equality of hope. That's dangerous. Why? Because we all equally hope to attain our ends. Ends, it just means goals, right? Not like end as in complete. End as in, well, complete in the sense of what would complete my life? Well, if I had a house and I had X, Y, and Z. So our own conservation, that's the main goal. We all want to live. We all want to survive. And we equally do. All those hopes are on the same level, right? So one equality, a fundamental equality, gives rise to another fundamental equality, right? So, and this is where the danger is. We all hope for the same kinds of things. Well, so we have equality of hope. And from this arises the equality of the hope in the attaining of our ends. And therefore, if any two men desire the same thing, which nevertheless they cannot both enjoy, so now there's scarcity, right? So a combination of a couple empirical factors, equality of mind and body, equality of hope, scarcity of resource, conflict. You're going to have problems. People are now going to immediately hope for the same things. You've got no basis to say why one person should get it over the other. And you can see it's going to be competition. And it's not going to be pretty because everything is more or less equal. So it's not going to end fast. It's going to be rough. And we'll see Hobbes elaborate this. So it's not exactly a pretty picture, but don't worry, Hobbes is trying to tell us that it can have a good ending, in a way, if you like Hobbes' solution. But he's trying to say that the solution is better than the initial problem. So what we get is we're all hoping, and so people start endeavoring, right? I'm hoping, you're hoping, our hopes are conflicting, and so we start trying to think of how can I get what I want, and how can I get what I'm hoping for. And it's legitimate to hope, right? You're perfectly legitimate in hoping and me too. So everything there's no real morals. There isn't a moral structure yet. Nobody's hope is more legitimate than the other. Even saying that a hope is legitimate implies a normative structure, which, according to Hobbes, is not even here yet. We're still on the level of passions, emotions, and bodies and minds. There's no ethical superstructure of any kind. So Hobbes thinks that ethics arises out. It's not brought down. It arises out of the situation. We'll see that in a minute. All right. So then you're starting to think about how to get around things, how to you now, because of your quality of hope to attain ends, you start succumbing to what Hobbes calls diffidence. Today, we typically think of diffidence in terms of lack of confidence in oneself, or timidity, or something like that. In Hobbes's day, but we also today also can think of it as a lack of confidence in others. Hobbes means the second. That is the lack of confidence in others. You start becoming, we could now say, because I hope and I know what I am and I know what you are. Well, I know you're hoping for the same thing as I am, and our hopes could clash, and so I'm going to be a little less trustful of you because, hey, I'm a human being too, and I know what we're like. And we're not exactly wonderful. And so I know that you're out for the same stuff as me. It's going to clash with me. So I'm going to have a lack of trust in you. I'm going to start being suspicious. And because I'm going to be suspicious, I'm going to start planning because I've been thinking about this. And so in this way, I'm going to start planning this out. So from diffidence, this lack of confidence, Hobbes says there's nothing so reasonable as to start anticipating. So anticipation is the next concept that comes into play. So we'll look at that in the next video. But for now, just think, out of equality grows all these problems. And eventually we're now leading up to actual conflict. We're kind of in the hopes and dreams, anticipating and planning stages. But it gets worse.